Well, let's cross to the studio, still joined by Grace Blakeley, also Talk TV contributor Esther Cracker, who are both listening into that. And look, I know we've all potentially got very different positions on this, but we are all women. My position is that, obviously I'm pretty sympathetic to trans rights, and I feel they're a marginalised and oppressed group mostly. But when it comes to sport, it's a little more complicated because of the physicality of it. Grace?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think, this quite obviously, this has become a culture war issue, right? Yeah. So it's like you're either on one extreme or the other. You're either for trans women being able to compete in sports or you're against it. And actually, this is very clearly something that needs to be decided by sporting bodies on a case-by-case basis. And also literally on a case-by-case basis. So you need to be looking at the athlete in question, looking at whether or not there is one person dominating a sport, and then it just becomes not entertaining to watch. So you need to think about how you're doing the rules there. And it's not just trans people, it's also intersex people. Remember we had the South African runner who was barred from competing exactly on the basis that she had high testosterone levels. So clearly we're at this point now where because competitive sports like this have grown so much and they become so much more popular, there's a range of different people competing, that the rules which gave rise to the separation of men and women's sports are being reconsidered. And do we need to now think of something like, we're testing athletes based on like hormone levels, testosterone levels, along with other metrics of how their body performs under stress, along with thinking about, if they're trans, did they transition pre or post teenagerhood? Like all of these things need to be decided very specifically, not just this culture war battle.
I mean, the lady said something which I think is probably the pinnacle of this debate, which is biology over identity. On the issue of intersex people, yes, I do think it should be a case-by-case basis, and people born with, chromosomal disorders and all of that. That's fine. That's biology, right? But on the issue of transgenderism, that's an identity issue, right?
It's also a biology issue.
Well, it's not a biology issue.
We alter our biologies all the time.
But the thing is,
we take the pill, we alter our biology.
They are not, fundamentally, they're not altering every single cell in their body, which is, every single cell in your body is a marker of what your sex is. So that's completely different. On the issue of intersex, I don't think you can, conflate that with transgenderism, because you can't choose to be intersex. You can choose to be transgender.
Well, I mean, people would argue that you can't, but I think...
Regardless, but that is the bottom line. I think, obviously, and I know we all agree that at some point in the weeks or months that we do this job, we will talk about trans issues, and we're just like, oh, why again? Because we haven't simplified what the rules should be. And this is the thing, most people don't disagree. I've always said there should be a trans category for most sports, not because I'm going to be sitting at the front row watching, but because this will solve the whole debate. They get representation, they get to compete. There is no, issue of how female athletes feel or male athletes or any of this. There's none of this confusion, and they get to compete and they get to feel represented. I don't know why we're not championing that more. That would solve this whole problem. But really, if we keep going down to, but it's not my fault, I'm trans or whatever, look, you have your own league, case closed.